right, Chad. Well, thank you for coming to the podcast. Appreciate your time. So how about you open up with telling us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, thanks, Curtis. A little bit about me. So I usually start with where I grew up. So I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan. I think you knew that.
Yeah.
I grew up there for most of my life, like same house, same block, everything. Only went to 2 schools for the most part. So elementary, high school. And then after that, started to make my way to Alberta eventually. But how I got here was finishing my massage therapy school.
So what age was that?
That would have been 24, 25. I skipped a few things. Yeah.
In Saskatchewan then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I tried university at U of S for a year. Mostly just went and ran on the track team. That was my main sort of focus throughout high school was long distance running. So I did that. I was quite competitive, went to nationals, went to junior nationals as well, finished 5th in the 5,000 meter, which was probably my best race throughout my high school running career. And then I just...
How long did that take you?
The 5K?
Yeah.
Good question. I think it was 15:14.
That's not bad then, eh?
15 minutes, 14 seconds on the track. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I couldn't do that now, but I just signed up for a 10K actually yesterday. So I've got to start training again.
Really? When's the 10K?
March 12th. It's like a St. Patty's Day weekend run.
And you're going to start training now?
Yeah, it's just a 10K. I mean,
it's just a 10K.
I run and play soccer. So
do you still?
I should be okay. Yeah.
What league?
Just CUSA, co-ed rec, and then I help out with a men's over 35 team here.
You should have told me about that.
Do you play?
I used to play for 15 years.
Oh,
I played soccer forever.
Oh, come join our team.
Yeah. Well, I probably suck now, but
you'll be fine. We're just there to have fun.
Yeah. Fair. Okay, so you were how old again when you left Saskatchewan?
Yeah, so we'll go back to so I grew up in Saskatchewan, ran track throughout my high school career, and then I ended up at U of S for just 1 year just to try distance running and try university at that level.
So what were you taking in university?
Good question. I took a little bit of random stuff.
Just so you could get into track? Is that pretty much what
it was? Just to test the waters. Like at that time, when you're young and you're like, oh, I have to go to university. Like that's what we're supposed to do. So I took kinesiology, I took math, I took English, I took an economics class, which I dropped within I think probably a week or two.
Why that one?
I took the class thinking this would be good to get into some sort of business later in life, learn about the economy. When you're young, you don't really know much about the purpose of classes, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, so I dropped that one pretty quick. And I did okay at university, but I didn't know what I wanted to do, right?
Okay.
So when you're not interested and you don't know what you want to do, it's hard to stay focused. And I had very minimal study skills too. I focused mainly on track when I wasn't in class. So
what do you mean by minimal study skills? Like you just didn't want to study at all?
No, I didn't know how to learn, I guess. Yeah. I wasn't slow, but I mean, to sit down with a textbook and start flipping through pages and reading, do you actually absorb information? Yeah. And for me, I had such a struggle with reading and focusing on pages, and I'd flip through books and I was like, I just read 5 pages and I have no idea what I read.
Now, is that due to the lack of interest though?
I think it was a combination of lack of interest and maybe some slight ADHD growing up, just hard to stay focused.
Yeah.
So yeah, long story short, tried university for a year and just realized the classes weren't quite for me. I did well at kinesiology, well enough. And then I just took a little break after that, traveled to Australia and backpacked for about 6 months.
Did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was fun. I went through the whole east coast of Australia. And
so you're quite the traveler then, eh?
Yeah, that's kind of when the travel bug kind of bit me, just leaving when you're at a young age. I was 20 when I left.
Yeah.
Had my 21st birthday in Australia, which was pretty fun. And
I had my I don't remember what birthday it was, but I had my birthday in Japan.
Oh,
but
nice.
I also flew back the same day, so I had my birthday for 36 hours in Japan because of the time difference.
Just celebrating on the plane.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Australia, travel bug, 21 in Australia. What came after that?
after Australia, just kind of you arrive back home and you're kind of living on that high after traveling. You're pretty relaxed. And I was 21 years old and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm not going to do school yet. So I just had a couple part-time jobs. I think I worked at an off sale. And then I briefly went to Vancouver for a couple of months, like about 3 months, tried to kind of give it a go, but just found that it was a struggle to like make enough money, finding jobs. Was there for a relationship too, and that didn't work out. So then I decided, I was like, okay, I think it's time to buckle down and get some sort of certification. Which is what led me to massage therapy. So I was thinking of massage probably first started in the 10th grade because as an athlete running track and cross country, I had some Achilles tendonitis, small back injury too from a relay. And my coach sent me to massage therapy. And I was like, okay, I've never gone for a massage, but hopefully this helps. And just after one massage, I was interested in like what they were working on, just feeling like muscles releasing and feeling that tension, like slight discomfort. But then after the massage, I was like, wow, I feel way better. And over my high school career of track, I went for massages all the time, like just working on my legs. I was like, yeah, I've got a race in 2 weeks. I just want to decrease some tension, keep the injuries at bay. And just massage seemed like a cool profession. My massage therapist, his name was Chad as well. And I liked how he worked out of his house, and I was like, this is a versatile profession. It's cool. You don't have to sit in front of a screen. You get to meet different people. You get like immediate effects after doing a treatment. So I just kind of planted that seed in my mind to maybe study massage one day. So tried university, traveled a bit. It was kind of a bum for a little bit. And then I decided to study massage therapy
So where else did you travel during that period?
Not too many other places, just all across Australia and then the South Island, mainly of New Zealand.
Do you ever think about doing education in other countries?
I have actually.
Yeah.
I was just in Mexico and I was, we can talk about that in a bit, but I don't know the details of how that would work, but I've been thinking about it. Yeah.
Because you hear a lot of people that's how they broaden their, like expand their knowledge and become better at what they do is they actually go to different countries because they have different ideologies, different modalities.
Oh yeah. Like studying in the different countries.
Yeah. And like bring it all in as one and apply it, places. Cause I'm sure, like when I was in Japan, I went for massages there and they were entirely different.
I bet. Yeah.
Than the massages here. And I'm sure when you go to Thailand, they're entirely different. Right. Yeah. So it's like, I think taking in all those different avenues from different cultures could probably help expand your knowledge and be better at what you do.
Yeah. I have a friend, my old business partner from Canmore, actually, she went and studied Thai massage in Thailand for about 2 weeks. As far as like learning different modalities, I mean, I went to India to study yoga. So I felt like I needed to go to the source of yoga to understand it. As far as learning other modalities, I may take some courses in the future. But I've also thought about teaching in other countries too, like maybe opening up a college or something like that. Yeah, that would be cool. Right now, nothing really in the works for like overseas continuing education right now. I'm working on a couple courses of my own right now, so that's kind of what's.
What do you mean of your own?
Time. I'm creating content. Well, I've just finished creating one continuing education course for massage therapists.
Like that, so you'll be putting it on.
So I've put the recording together. It's an online one.
Okay.
So there's a platform online called the Online Wellness Institute, and they're based out of Chestermere, just outside of Calgary here. So they have a continuing education platform where they help to educate mainly massage therapists and other soft tissue workers. I would say it's for massage therapists, but I think like physios could take it too if they wanted to.
Okay.
But you take a course online and then you get credits towards your continuing education.
Oh, so it's like totally under the college aspect or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So the massage associations recognize the credentials essentially.
Okay, so how do you get into something like that?
Well, I think over the years of teaching, and being a massage therapist, you get more and more experience with educating, and then you're like, oh, what else can I do, right? I've had some ideas for other courses too, like a shoulder course where I teach people how to treat the shoulder, like a little bit more specifically, talk about different injuries. I haven't actually taught that course yet, but I've put it together. It's just been hard to find the right time.
Yeah.
Especially over the last couple of years. And then other things have taken up my time, but I thought there was an opportunity to do an online one. And so I just was actually going over some of the videos this morning. So they do the editing, and then I'm just doing the final review, and that should be up and running probably by the end of the month.
So what do you need to, like, because obviously when you go, it's not like some random Joe can come off the street and just say, hey, look, I put a course together, right? What do you need for them to accept that course? Like, you need certain credentials, certain amount of experience, reputation, like how does that work?
So good question. Yeah. And we can get into the details of massage therapy regulation a little bit. So in Alberta, massage therapy is not regulated. Yeah. So it's not officially recognized by the federal government as it is considered a health profession, but it's not considered a regulated health profession.
And why is that?
It just hasn't got there yet. There's lots of different thoughts as to why. Some say it's bringing the associations together to work together. Others kind of say, well, the government doesn't want to regulate. But I think it's kind of a combination of a bunch of things. So having a government in Alberta that's typically conservative and all about business is good. So you have freedom to create your own businesses, to sort of govern yourself. But it runs into trouble because now we have, I think, about 4 or 5 massage therapy associations in the province.
Okay.
And what that means is that a registered massage therapist can become registered after they complete school by joining any one of these associations.
Okay.
And to join the associations, all you need to do is simply say that you graduated from a massage therapy school in Alberta. And typically they'll look at it being like a legitimate school. And for that, it just needs to be licensed under the Alberta higher learning education standards.
Okay. So talking about the courses that you're putting on and getting the education and such. So what are some of the first steps for you to get that education? Like when you decided, okay, I'm going to be a massage therapist, what was the first route you took?
Oh, so when I decided to become a massage therapist, I looked at a couple different schools, but I decided to go back to Regina. So I was in Vancouver at the time, left and was like, okay, I think it's time to go to school, get some sort of diploma, certification.
I'll get you to pull it closer to you if you can.
Yeah, for sure. And there we go.
Yeah, that's better.
So when I decided to study massage, it made sense to return back home to my hometown, just live at the parents' place. And 2-year course, felt like I could get that accomplished like fairly quickly.
Sorry to cut you off, but so you said back home. So was that after traveling?
Yeah.
Or you had moved to Alberta and then back to Saskatchewan, or?
So I hadn't moved to Alberta yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry if we're confusing the listeners. We're jumping around a little bit. But so at the age of about 22, I went back to Regina from Vancouver after I'd just worked a little bit at kind of random jobs, and then decided to study massage at the college in Regina called Western College of Massage Therapy.
Okay.
And it seemed to have a good reputation back then. Like there wasn't Google reviews or anything. You couldn't research quite as much, but I had heard good things. Now I'm 37.
37. Okay. Yeah. And this was at what age again?
About 22, I believe.
22.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went back to your parents' home so you could take massage therapy in Regina.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you said they were a good course. They were a good school.
It was a great school. So I went back to Regina and then enrolled in the Western College. And I think it was 2007 because I graduated in 2009. So in the fall of 2007. And yeah, just started school, private college. Didn't really know what to expect, but loved pretty much every minute of it. I was really excited when I was learning about the body, learning about anatomy. And we studied a lot of human physiology as well. So we went through a whole textbook, which typically med students and nurses would learn. Yeah. And I know this because I was dating a girl who was in nursing school at the time. And she's like, you're learning like similar stuff as us, like, and quite in depth, like learning about the endocrine system. And it's not crazy detailed, but it's an anatomy and physiology textbook this big.
So why do they dive so deep into that with massage therapy? I mean, like, I could understand, but for...
Yeah, good question. And a lot of people do ask, like, oh, why do you have to learn that? And I like to say it's because we're healthcare professionals, right? We're healthcare providers. We're part of the healthcare system. So when we're treating a client, it's good to know how the body works. We're treating a body, right? To know just muscles is one thing, but to know how the nervous system works and how it attaches to muscles and moves muscles essentially, or sends the signals for muscles to move. But then even little things like knowing how the digestive system works and how the food you absorb is going to be used to create muscle. You would probably know a little bit more about this with your nutrition expertise, right? But like bones, all the systems of the body, I think it's 12 systems of the body. So we learn about the lymphatic system, digestive system, the respiratory system, muscle, and so on, right?
So is this just that college, or do you think every college does this?
Yeah, so good question. I'll finish up how I ended up here real quick, and then we'll get back into that. So we did the 2-year program. I graduated from massage, learn other things like kinesiology, movement. We even take a therapeutic exercise course. And then we'd learn our skills. And my school was quite specific on the hands-on practice, and we learned a lot of extra techniques where you can use like muscle energy techniques, isometric stretching, PNF stretching, and just looking at alignment. I wasn't going to say it, but it's kind of similar to some osteopathy, so manual osteopathy. Yeah. So the college that I went to taught sort of bits of that. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so I graduated school. I worked in Regina for about a year, and then I moved to Jasper. So I just was wanting to leave, wanting to travel a little bit more, work in a different place. It's kind of a cool story. I had my name in with a hiring agency, or my resume with a hiring agency, and they were an agency that specifically hired massage therapists and estheticians to work at resorts, as well as cruise ships. And I had done a bunch of research about working on cruise ships, and I felt like it was 50-50. I didn't really want to go, but I was like, oh, it could be fun. From the people I talked to, they said it was difficult, long hours, but also kind of fun. And you made okay money, but not great money. Yeah. And you're kind of stuck on a boat. So anyways, I put my resume in with that agency anyways, just to kind of see. And I got a phone call around November 10th, 2010. I can't remember the exact day, but it was around Remembrance Day, I remember. And I'm in Regina, and I get this phone call, and they're like, hey, do you want to work in Bermuda? And I was like, oh man, that would be amazing. Like, work in a hotel in Bermuda. I never thought about being in a resort, let alone like the cruise ship. So yeah, unfortunately I had just bought a car and was like, okay, I got to pay for this car. And I was starting a new massage job at another clinic. I was even taking part-time classes at university, like some psychology classes for my own personal interest. And I was just like too busy to like leave. And
so you turned it down?
So I turned it down.
God damn it, Chad.
However, there's a twist to the story. So later that day, I'm driving back to work, and there's a snowstorm, and I'm just going through a slow school zone, and it's icy, and this guy loses control in his lane, overcorrects, and then he hits me head on. So a head-on collision, going about 40 or even slower because we both hit the brakes. The airbag went off, and I was like, okay, that was shitty.
I just bought this thing.
Yeah. I literally had the car for 3 months. And I remember just kind of glancing over after the accident, and the snow's coming down, and I was like, well, my car's going to be totaled. I guess I can go to Bermuda. Yeah. So I actually phoned the lady back, and then when she looked at my resume, she's like, oh, you don't have quite enough RMT experience to go to Bermuda. But she said, do you want to go to Jasper or Lake Louise? And that's what kind of led me to Alberta. And I said, you know what? Yeah, let's go to Jasper. So I dealt with the car insurance and everything, got some money back for that. And then within about a month, I went through my interviews to work at the Fairmont Hotel in Jasper and got the job and was there just before Christmas and started working as an RMT in the spa there. So that was my first introduction into like spa style massage. Yeah. Prior to that, I worked at a gym and did more like, I call it sports and therapeutic massage therapy, which I really like. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do more so now. But when I got to Jasper, I just like was relaxed, started snowboarding on my days off, finally saving a little bit of cash, having fun, living in staff accommodation, meeting people, still fairly young because I think I was about 24, 25 at the time. So that's how I ended up in Alberta. And then I moved to Lake Louise after a year in Jasper. And then that's when I traveled again. I went to South America, backpacked through South and Central America. And then I moved to Canmore. And then that's close to the time when we met. So I lived in Canmore for a couple of years. And then I had some injuries with my shoulder, got certified in personal training, and then took a little break from massage therapy and then personal trained at Good Life. And that's where I met Curtis. Mm-hmm. And I was there for about 6 months, roughly. And
it wasn't very long, was it?
No, it wasn't too long. I still had a like a small business with a friend in Canmore. And
because you were traveling back and forth, weren't you?
I wasn't working back there, but I had someone kind of working for me. Oh, okay. And what led me to make the move back was that girl, that RMT stopped working for us. And I was like, okay, I need to move back to pay for the space, essentially. And so I moved back to Canmore, which was good. And I stayed there for about another year and a half. And then I got my foot in the door teaching massage. So now my massage career is, at that time, it was hitting around 8 or 9 years. Felt like I had a lot of experience, kind of well-rounded, taken some courses, did personal training, got certified in teaching yoga. And I was like, yeah, I could teach massage. That sounds cool. So I started commuting from Canmore to Calgary again, back to Calgary. So
that's probably what I'm thinking of then, because I remember you commuting at one point.
Yeah, that's when I was commuting. So that was after Good Life. And then I decided, you know what, I think I should move to the city to teach more. So at the college I was at, I asked if there was more courses I could teach. And she was like, yeah, I'd love to have you teach more. So that's when I moved to the city officially in 2018. And then I started teaching massage about 5 days a week and then a couple weekends too. And then been here for 4 years since then. I'm now teaching at a different college. I teach at CDI College. And then I'm massaging out of a chiropractor clinic, which is great. We've got a physiotherapist there. It's I'd say like a medium-sized clinic. And it's great. I do more of the like sports massage, specific therapeutic, basically like focusing on 1 or 2 areas at a time instead of that sort of full body relaxation style massage.
So do you not have the situation in Canmore anymore?
No, that was we finished that, which was kind of good timing because I was enjoying teaching, and the friend, my business partner, she was talking about moving to BC. Okay. And I was like, well, there's no sense in us keeping a business in a town we're not going to live in. So we decided to kind of go separate ways, like super peacefully. We're like, oh, this was good experience. Looking back, I don't know if I would have started a business. I'm sure you kind of know.
Why is that?
Well, the extra things that you don't think about. I think a lot of people are kind of naive. They're like, oh yeah, I'm a professional, I know this. But then the back end of like, oh, I have to figure out how to do my SEO settings on Google, and then website design and marketing and even just materials for marketing. So you end up wearing all these different hats for your business. When in reality, I was like, well, I mostly just want to massage. Like that's my business and do a bit of personal training. Yeah. Well,
especially when you start out, because like when you're starting out, you may not necessarily have the finances. Mm-hmm. Most people don't to like hire somebody to do their website or to do their social media and everything that you mentioned. And so, then you really have to take it upon yourself to be like, okay, now I really need to learn this. So then you're investing all this time into researching and trying to create it. And like, you know, for example, like when I started this podcast and like we were having the conversation before we started filming, like I'm very particular. I got to have fancy equipment and stuff, or just like impedes my confidence. But so much time would be wasted learning how to edit, learning how to do, you know, build logos and do this and mess with color grading and all these kind of things. And so a lot of time gets lost there. And so like, but we were talking about this too, like to hire somebody to edit videos. Like I know one of my previous clients in Saskatchewan, she was telling me that a videographer is $500 a minute.
Wow.
Like, and so it's like, okay, well, you got to look at your return on your investment. Is that worth it for someone in my position? Not really. For me. So this is why like seeking out the other avenues of trying to promote the business and things like YouTube and like, and the podcast and such. So with that, is that something that you would venture into? Or are you just kind of like content with, because you mentioned you're working for a clinic right now and everything, like what are you aspiring to be with the massage therapy? What's like the end goal kind of idea?
Good question. Yeah, we're getting deep already. So end goal, I would say I've got currently like a 3 and 5 year plan and 10-year plan as well. So for the most part, I'm pretty content where I'm at right now. As a business owner from years ago, I did have a bit of debt, so I wanted to make sure I paid that off. When you start a business, you think like, oh, I've got 10 or 20 grand saved up. That should last me a while. It doesn't last you as long as you think it does. And little things like getting the equipment, like you said, for the podcast, it's thousands of dollars where you're just like, did this even help my business yet? And it doesn't for a while, right? So I don't have regrets because I learned so much. Which I think makes me pretty happy where I'm at, because I know that where I do work, we have a receptionist. So that's a cost. There's a cost to the space, and that's a cost that I don't incur right now, and I can take time off, and I don't have to still pay rent. So I have a pretty good split, and my colleague / boss, the chiropractor who owns the clinic, we get along super well. We have pretty similar treatment styles. We refer clients back and forth, so it's great. Like,
what do you mean refer clients? Oh, because he's chiropractor.
Yeah,
I get it. Okay.
So she's sending me clients all the time, and it's great. So the next couple of years, my plan is to keep teaching. I like teaching part-time. Right now I'm teaching about 30 hours a week, which is quite a lot. And then I'm massaging another, usually 10 to 15. So that keeps me pretty busy. And then I don't do any personal training right now, but I'm always giving my patients things they can do for like if they are going to the gym, or just recommending certain exercises. I feel like I'm a pretty well-rounded massage therapist with my yoga background, so training. I got my 200-hour yoga teacher training, and then I took a 500-hour teacher training from Mount Royal University, which was a yoga therapy certificate. And then I have a couple specific, I'll call them like weekend courses where you get a little bit more information on things like yin yoga versus restorative yoga. So I have trainings in those or certificates in those as well. And then another advanced teacher training. I would like to take another course, possibly a 200-hour again. And then that would kind of round me out to about 1,000 hours of yoga training. Which I think is a pretty good amount. Not in a rush to do that. I might find something. But yeah, over the next couple of years, just saving up a little bit of money, maybe buy a house in the future. And then just trying to enjoy like getting to where I wanted to be now, right? Like I spent a little while getting out of debt. And instead of rushing back into like school and spending more money on things, I was like, you know what, let's take a step back and kind of enjoy having some cash in your account, right?
Not living off food stamps.
Exactly.
No, that's smart, because I think like that's something that I can speak for myself, is like when you dive into things, like, so that was what I did with like my education. It was just like education after education after education, and just racking up, you know, the debt. And because like, you know, you got to spend money to make money kind of thing, but there is that fine line where it's like, okay, you know, at what point do you start focusing on the business?
Yeah.
Right. And this is one of the reasons now why I'm doing these sort of things. Like, don't get me wrong, this is actually super enjoyable. Right.
Yeah,
and I love to get to know people more and hear their stories. But it's like time to put more into the business and get that exposure. You know, I've done lots of schooling. I've gotten lots of certifications and whatnot. And now it's time. It's like, okay, start talking about what you know, start applying more of what you know. And kind of building your business that way. And so I definitely get that aspect. So I want to talk about the personal training part of it, just out of pure curiosity. What led to that? Was that just because you felt as if I had taken personal training, this is going to help me be better at massage therapy?
Kind of, yeah. So part of it had to do with what I felt I could offer my patients and my clients. Another part of it was personal too. Like a lot of times we learn things because we want that knowledge, right? It's not necessarily because we want to share it directly with people all the time, but it's like, hey, I want to learn that, right? I want to learn more. Being an athlete, I always felt like I had a coach in high school. I had a coach in university. We had trainers. We had very, like when I was on the national team or I think it was the Canada West team, we had doctors of like exercise physiologists come and talk about programming and nutrition with us. So I had a pretty good background personally, but I didn't have too much formal training essentially. So long story short, part of me felt like, hey, maybe I'll go back to school to become a physiotherapist, right? But I felt like that would take another 7 years of schooling, getting a degree, then applying to get your master's to become a physiotherapist. And then ultimately end up working in a treatment room, kind of doing similar stuff that I was already doing. So that's why, or that's part of why I decided to study personal training, because I could get that strength kind of aspect, that movement aspect of how to rehabilitate clients. And then yoga was about the stretching, the flexibility, and as well as personal interest. So by tying in together my massage therapy knowledge, the personal training experience, and then the yoga, I feel like it's kind of rounded me out to being like I don't know if I'd say like a movement therapist, but a massage therapist who can prescribe like pretty specific stretches and strengthening. I wouldn't say I'm into the weight loss or the bodybuilding at all. But injury prevention and rehab, I love working with that, like especially shoulder injuries, because I've had a few shoulder injuries myself and I figured out what works well and how to maintain that. Yeah,
I got my separated shoulder, my dislocated, so that's where
I forgot. Yeah, we're
well versed in that because I had to take care of myself. So I understand that point that you're making with, you know, getting involved with your certifications, everything that you have. What is, because like, so for me, for example, like I cannot give medical advice, like by law, I cannot give medical advice. Do you have limitations with your certifications? Like obviously, like you wouldn't be able to give per se nutritional medical advice or medicine thing, but like what about in the act of physical exercise, stretching and stuff? Is there limitations by law or?
Yeah, like technically, like I used to be certified with CanFit Pro, which I think you were as well, but then you were certified with another.
No, I had a different one.
Or you had a different one.
Yeah, I didn't have CanFit Pro.
So I did CanFit Pro.
I refused to do their CanFit Pro.
That's fair. I did it because I had a pretty good background and it was a quicker way of doing it. I think I would not recommend doing only that certification. I think everyone should be studying. If you want to be a personal trainer, you'd probably agree. You should be studying like human body anatomy, physiology, some sort of course for probably at least a year, and I'd probably go as far as saying 2 years.
Do they offer that though? Is there something like that?
Yeah, there's because I'm only Royal University has.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay, because I've only ever been aware of like the weekend courses or like ISSA.
There's ISSA.
They have and then a longer one.
I think it's NASM, the national or NIS.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. What's ACE?
I've heard of it. I don't know too much about that one. Like some of my friends in Canmore who are trainers, I think the one buddy of mine, he did the NASM one. He was actually a massage therapist too from the UK, which was interesting. Yeah. So we trained well together. We used to do workouts together and sometimes I'd train some of his clients if he was away or he'd train some of mine. But the type of training I did do, I don't know if you remember, our boss would kind of send me some of the injured clients, people who had difficulty lifting their shoulder or maybe some knee problems or even a knee replacement. I liked to work with sort of, I don't want to say the fragile patients, but ones that were like rehabilitating or couldn't just jump right into doing squats right away, right?
The broken ones.
Yeah, that was the term she used. She's like, I'll just give you the broken patients.
So did you, so you no longer have a PT certification.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so you don't do like any programming for your clients and stuff?
No. So I don't do programming. I just do basic home care,
Okay.
which consists of, hey, stretch your quads for 3 minutes a day. That's going to help with your hip or your lower back pain. Or I'll say, okay, start doing some TheraBand exercises to strengthen your shoulder because you need to strengthen some of your rotator cuff muscles or all of them. Yeah, which a lot of people don't know there's more than one rotator cuff muscle.
Or like when you bring out supraspinatus, inferior spinatus, those kind of muscles.
Subscap.
Yeah, a lot of people are not aware of that. That's why too, like when you talk about, when you watch people do, is it this with the dumbbell and everything? It just drives me insane. Like the whole gravity feed.
Or they've got the TheraBand and they're just doing elbow extension.
Yeah. What's the dumbbell? They're both. But yeah, this one, I think when they're doing this with the dumbbell, and I'm just like, and so it's, I mean, I start to see there has been a shift. Like you're obviously not working in a gym anymore. I do contract out of King's for a very minimal amount of clients. So I still kind of see what's going on. And you can start to see a shift.
Oh, totally.
You can start to see that there's no longer these stupid, potentially injury-causing exercises that are occurring, or even just very ineffective exercises. I still think there's a lot of education to be taught, and like, I'm going to use the word comprehended or even received from individuals. So, for example, like when you talk about lots of people, like bodybuilders, for example, following old training regimens from the 80s and stuff because it worked for this individual, but the more research is coming out showing that, okay, like these movements are good. So for example, I was talking with a client this morning that lat, they call it a lat prayer, I guess, or whatever, right? Where your hands are pronated and you're doing a lat movement like this with the straight bar. There's enough research out there to show you that, it's not like cancer causing or anything, but it's not very effective. But I think we get stuck in these old school training modalities and we kind of don't want to stem away from them. And so I find that stuff is slowly being phased out, but the odd person, but that's where I find the most injuries are occurring with individuals or who are following those old training modalities. Is that something that you would see on average? Like when someone comes to you and they're injured, can you get enough information to figure out what they had done?
Usually, yeah. So in the massage therapy setting, the assessment's a little different. I will do a movement assessment, but it's usually pretty quick and it's specific to the area where they're injured, right? So I won't do a full body movement assessment, but I'll look at, for example, tendonitis of the forearm. Let's see how your wrist moves. Essentially, do you have optimal wrist flexion? Do you have pain during extension? Is there something else going on like carpal tunnel syndrome or even pecs that are impinging on the nerves and the brachial plexus? So I'll break it down and kind of look at what they need. But then I also kind of need to assess like, hey, how active is this patient? Are they resting, right? You do need to rest for certain things like tendonitis, right? You need to bring that inflammation down. And then what else are they doing? They're going to physio. And they can even end up doing too much stuff. They're like, oh yeah, I got needling yesterday, and then tomorrow I'm doing ultrasound, and then today I'm going for inflammatory
response.
Yeah, and it's just like, you need to give it time to heal, right?
Yeah. Well, that's like cryotherapy. Like I was having a conversation yesterday. The beginning stages of an injury, you want inflammation. That's the entire point of the whole immune system. But people go in and they start putting ice or NSAIDs, like anti-inflammatories and stuff. Yeah. Understanding, yes, pain is annoying, but it's like that pain is there for a reason. Totally. And that's the inflammatory process. It's the chronic inflammatory process that we have to be careful of. But that acute response is how that injury is dealt with. Yeah. Right?
I like to say you don't want to get rid of inflammation. Like we're not trying to take ibuprofen just to get rid of it so that the pain's gone. But it's important to control inflammation. And you can control it. Yeah, you can control it with ice. maybe you don't need a lot of ice.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need to ice every day.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you only need to ice for less than a week, like off and on, and then that's fine. And then let it heal, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe you just take an Advil the day of that injury, and then you're good to go. And then you slowly ease back into whatever, if you had a small muscle strain or something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
And so the unfortunate reality of some of that stuff though, is it becomes a crutch. So for example, like I would like you to use Tylenol so you can get a good night's sleep tonight, which is going to help decrease that inflammation and help you heal. But then, they take that Tylenol, they get a good night's sleep. They don't take it the next night. They get a poor night's sleep. So then they continue to take Tylenol. What happens is it's like, oh, well, I feel fine when I take Tylenol, which inhibits them from getting to what is actually creating this chronic inflammatory response.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing when you talk about, like, no hate on chiropractors, but when we look at chiropractors and things, and I'm sure as you know this, when people say, oh, my hips are out of place or whatever, well, it's something is like, if that's the case, something is putting you into that position. So you need to train around that.
Yeah. You need to figure out why it's not in the right position.
And not just continuously going to the chiropractor, because in the end, because you hear it all the time, oh, my neck is hurting me, but it doesn't hurt when I go to the chiropractor. It's like, well, it shouldn't, unless you've sustained some massive injury in an accident, you should be able to live your life pain-free.
Exactly.
Without having to go to the chiropractor every other week or every week kind of thing.
Yeah, right? and I am a firm believer in that. I mean, I don't know if my colleagues would like me saying it, but I believe if you are taking good care of yourself, you shouldn't have to go see professionals for help. If you're doing a little bit of foam rolling, if you are going to the gym, if you're doing some stretching, if you're doing some cardio, if you're eating healthy, you're living an optimal life, right?
Yeah.
But if you're not doing those things, then you need someone to kind of help you out. And it's tough to get started too. And it's tough if you don't know what to do, right?
So that's what I was going to jump to. So that's exactly it. You could say those words to one of your patients, clients, whatever you want to call them, like, oh, if you go into the gym and you train, this is helping alleviate that pain. But the problem is, and this is what I tell my clients when things like physio tell you not to work out, one of the big reasons they're saying that is because you're going to go in the gym not knowing what to do, and you could exacerbate the condition. Whereas if you know what to do, you can expedite the healing process.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. And so when we look at like alignments and stuff, like let's just take chest, for example, right? You got people chest pressing like this. Yeah. When you need to be more adapted towards the hips, right? And like I can attest to that. Like I'd do chest day and everything but my chest would be pumped up, right? Because you're bench pressing like this. Yeah. You're not structurally aligned properly.
Your triceps and delts are just
everything, right?
What about my pecs?
Yeah, exactly. And so I understand why these professionals will say, hey, don't go to the gym. Yeah. It's because most individuals don't know what they're doing, or like I've been on my YouTube channel, I've been creating exercise instructional videos like once a week.
Oh, nice.
And I did one for the rear delt row. And so when you see people doing rear delt flies, they're up and they're doing this kind of stuff. And understandably, like you're going to get a pump and everything because you're getting this sensation because, as I mentioned in the video, when you raise your arm like this, you are shortening the upper portion of the posterior delt, but you are lengthening the lower portion. And then that's going to cause more of a struggle around the joint, which stimulates the central nervous system, giving you this sensation that you're really working the muscle, right? But then you go back, you do enough reps of this over years. Well, yeah, you're going to build rear delts, but you can also lead to shoulder pain and injuries. Whereas the simplicity, what I tell people, I actually forgot to mention this in the video, but think of pizza, right? Most people's shortest rear delt, where we'll say perfectly aligned, is a 45 degree from the torso. So where you can get the most shoulder extension, so the furthest your elbows can get behind your body.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? And then that's where you're going to hit the shortest portion of the rear delt.
Yeah.
And so
like a row.
Like in a row.
A row is quite great for the rear delt.
Yeah, right? 100%. Right. But when people do those flies, they're kind of like, not only are they limited by the machine's path, right? But also too, they're like sometimes overextending. And you look at people that suffer from neck injuries, they're all upper traps.
Yeah.
Because they don't work their serratus anterior properly. So they got winging scapula. They don't work their pecs properly because they're benching like this. So it's like the gym can be such a powerful tool to heal someone, But on the other spectrum, it can also be a powerful tool to create injuries if you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, I 100% agree. And yeah, you shouldn't enter a gym. I mean, obviously we want people to be healthy, and like if you want to go to the gym, go to the gym. But if you don't know what you're doing at the gym, you got to start somewhere. And it depends on your background. It even depends on your personality. Like I've met people who are into like things like physics and engineering. They're very like analytical minds. Yeah. And then they've never had a personal trainer, but they do reading, they watch videos, and they just kind of get it. They click, and they can break it down. And it's like, oh, you learned how to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
So some people can learn that. Not everybody can. And I've had clients. I'm sure you've had tons. I remember at Good Life bringing in people who have never been to the gym, and they're like, yeah, I'm just going to do 3 sessions and then I'm good to go.
What was that? It was just like some PT starter pack.
Yeah, it was like 3 or 4 sessions. And I remember seeing one guy and I was like, I do not feel comfortable you working out on your own. Just watching him try and do a squat, I'm like, yeah, you're going to get hurt, right? So some people are going to get hurt. I like to keep things simple. I've kind of gone from a point where I learned a lot about movement. I learned a lot about specific things, and like, there's so many things you could do. You could be balancing on a Bosu ball and doing like a kettlebell press, while like balancing on your knees or whatever. Sure, that's kind of fun, but you don't need to do that stuff. I've kind of gone into like, oh, this is really cool. Like I'm going to do bench press while working my core at the same time. But I've kind of gone back and I keep things simple, and I try to make the gym fun now. Yeah. Cause, I'm not looking to prove much. I'm looking to maintain, get stronger. I have goals here and there. Like right now it's running and being in shape to play some co-ed league soccer. Right. I snowboard and I mountain bike a little bit. So I want to be able to do those things. And that's what I use the gym for. And then taking care of my shoulder as well too.
I want to comment on like where you said like you're doing the bench press and working the core at the same time. So like the old me, like the miserable old me would have been like, oh, that's so stupid, right? But one thing that I've really come to learn is if that's what gets you in the gym to focus on your health and well-being, then all the power to you. Yeah. Second, right? Like if you look, okay, so where that movement would be really poor would be if somebody's trying to really build their chest. Oh, like hypertrophy, right? Yeah. Maybe they don't care to build their chest. Yeah. Right. But let's say they really want to get like their heart rate up and build a bunch of lactic acid. Hell yeah, do a bench press with a core. Right? It's not my personal choice, but you're not at risk of injuring yourself. Well, I mean, maybe for some individuals, but
you got to do it right.
100%. Yeah. But it's one of those things where, now it's at the point where like, I always say this now, I could create the most perfect training program, like theoretically on paper, or the most perfect nutrition plan. But if this individual is not willing to follow it for X, Y, Z, then it's obviously not perfect.
It's not going to work.
Right. Yeah. And that's the difference between like a coach and like, a scientist.
True. Yeah.
Right. Because the scientist is exact where like, I should say coach, say practitioner. Research versus practitioner. Right? Because research is like going to be exact, very textbook we're not going to go outside of this realm at all, where a practitioner should be taking different avenues. And that's why like I asked about going to other countries and all that kind of stuff. So for example, in my profession, I mainly practice functional medicine, but I also use biomechanics and anatomy and training and yoga. Obviously, I'm not a massage therapist, but I will like recommend massage therapy. I'm really big on lymphatic massage, which I want to get to in a second. But I also have my TCM, my Chinese medicine certification. So I use that. Like you try to implement as many things as possible because instead of being just like tunnel vision to this one thing, you can better people or yourself by understanding, like I said, for example, if somebody wants to go in and do a bench press while they're working their core, then all the power to them. Like I said, if they come to me and they're like, I'm struggling to build my chest, then I'm going to be like, okay, maybe let's not do that. But it's for the most part, just get in the gym safely. And I mentioned that on one of my Q&As that I was recording. Do your research first. Yep. Before you step foot in the gym. Right? Because a lot of people are scared to step foot in the gym because they don't know what they're doing and they don't want to look like a fool. But if you take the time to do your research, you can come in there and be a little more confident which is going to put you in a safer place. Never mind the people around you, but just the actual physical movement is going to be performed better because of that confidence.
For sure. Right? Yeah.
So, but lymphatic massage. I want to talk to you about lymphatic massage. Give me your view on lymphatic massage.
Oh, so you caught me off guard with this question. I'll be honest, I'm not a skilled lymphatic massage therapist. There are extra courses that you need to take in order to be able to do specific, true lymphatic massage.
Are you familiar with the Sanjiao?
No, I have not. Yeah.
So the Sanjiao is like theoretically the lymphatic system.
Okay.
And
this is TCM.
And the reason the Chinese know about it, because so it goes supposedly, is that when we die, the lymphatic system, like the outer portion kind of like dissipates, I guess, and it's harder to find. We should mention, I feel like, what the lymphatic system is. A lot of people may not know. That is true. Yeah, that is true. Okay, go ahead and give your explanation of the lymphatic system.
So the lymphatic system, I think of it as kind of like another network of veins or capillaries. So arteries take blood away from the heart, and then they send it to your tissues, everything pretty much. And then the veins bring it back. But there's another system, which is called the lymphatic system, of tiny little vessels that look kind of like veins. And essentially what they do is they pick up the leftovers that the veins didn't get, the extracellular fluid, a little bit of water, and they are your true immune system, or part of your true immune system. So when you think immunity, think lymphatic system. That's how I explain it to my students. So the lymphatic system has, it's throughout the whole body, and it picks up the extra stuff.
I just say waste removal system.
Yeah, waste removal. What I kind of say. And then there's little nodes like behind the knee and in the neck and the armpits. And they're filled with white blood cells, which are there to clean up bacteria, viruses, and pathogens, essentially. Mm-hmm. So that's the lymphatic system.
Yeah, and that's a very, I shouldn't use the word misunderstood, but neglected aspect. And that's something that I've really become like a big promoter of very recently. Like I've always kind of been in the back of my mind, but realizing that you can't push everything through the liver has really brought me to like, okay, we need to focus on this lymphatic system. And going back to the Sanjiao, I don't know, it's like a little nerd aspect I love saying. The reason the Chinese are so familiar with it is because they would cut open war prisoners alive. And that's how they knew for thousands of years about the Sanjiao, right? And then the whole reason like Chinese medicine is behind, I'm sure many people have heard me say this multiple times, is because like at the time when it was kind of like, obviously, we'll say like not Chinese culture was trying to discover this. The French were the leaders of like neuroscience at the time, and they went over and tried to interpret what the Chinese were trying to say. But if you know the Chinese, they're very secretive, so they're not going to kind of give everything away. And so a lot of that information was misinterpreted.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that's why Chinese medicine gets a bad name. But another reason it gets a bad name is because going back to what I said, you can't push everything to the liver. Well, you also can't push everything through the lymphatic system.
Totally.
And a lot of people are suffering from congested lymphatic systems. And this is where you get the new saying that sitting is the new smoking, which I don't fully agree with, but I understand where they're going
Sitting's
with it.
Sitting's not going to give you lung cancer.
100%, right? But what they're getting at is that lack of movement is not stimulating the lymphatic system because the lymphatic system doesn't have a pump like the cardiovascular system does with the heart.
It's all passive.
Right? Yeah. And so that's why lymphatic massage is actually a beneficial tool. Now, have you ever gone for a lymphatic massage?
So the good news is I just went for a proper lymphatic massage.
Okay, you got to tell me how your experience was.
Yeah. So coming back to lymphatic massage, when you move your body, when you go for a run, your heart's pumping blood, and obviously the fluid's going to start flowing. So the lymphatic system's going to be engaged and working.
Muscle contractions.
With muscle contraction and just with the different pressures, essentially. I can't remember the name of the pressure changes, but I think it's part of Boyle's law, but then there's another law of capillary diffusion. I can't remember his name, but anyways, when pressure goes out, pressure needs to go somewhere, and then it comes back into the veins and the lymph. So anyways, movement and essentially making your body work harder is great for the lymphatic system. But if you're not doing that, things can get, like you said, congested, backed up. So massage obviously manually moves things. It helps with venous return. And it does help with lymphatic, but basic or like general massage skills aren't that great at it. Whereas a lymphatic massage, which is done by a lymphatic massage practitioner who took extra courses, hopefully they've taken at least a couple of weeks to months on top of their massage for that lymphatic. I don't know if a weekend course would probably be pretty good to get a good intro, but the person that I saw has studied well over probably like close to 100 or more hours. Her name is, I want to say Cheryl.
Okay.
And I forgot her last name.
Because I go to a Megan.
Oh, it's not
from her New Health or whatever.
Yeah. I can tell you her info later if you want. But I'll probably go see her again. She's actually a friend of mine's mother.
Okay.
As well too. Anyways, so I got one. I was like, yeah, let me experience this. And so it was done in the supine position. So you're lying on your back on the massage table. And it took about a half an hour to do the specific lymphatic massage. And she starts with the neck, and she does essentially pumping or squeezing of the lymph nodes in the neck. Those lymph nodes are the closest ones to where the lymphatic system drains into the subclavian vein. And then it goes back to the heart and is distributed and recycled back again and cleaned essentially by your kidneys and liver.
Yeah, and these ones are super important too, like within the neck and everything, because you have your lymphatic system, which is the brain's clearance, right? Okay. And that can get very congested if the lymphatic system itself is congested. And so this is where you get brain fog and stuff from.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. That's why people who go for lymphatic massage are like, whoa, they just have this new cognitive capacity that they'd never experienced before.
Yeah.
Because that's why I asked about your experience. Because when I went for the first time ever, I lay on the table, and it was like a baby was giving me a massage. It was just the least amount of pressure.
Super gentle.
I was like, I can't believe I'm paying $130 for this. Like,
did they do the pumping or did they do more of like?
So she started with that. But so what I was going to say was, I was like, that was my state of mind, right? Even like having my background of the lymphatic system and whatnot. And then about a half hour in, I just got ice cold. Ice cold, but you could boil an egg on my skin, and I knew right there. I was like, this is it. I'm like, this is amazing. Yeah. I just knew, because that was getting, so when you're talking chi in the terms of Chinese, you're talking like blood flow and lymphatic flow. So it was getting my chi moving is what it was, because the same thing had occurred. One time I was getting acupuncture done, and this lady was in Red Deer, and she was more on the, shall I call, Western side of acupuncture. So let's just poke around and hope something happens, which I kind of appreciated on one spectrum. And so she was poking on the hips, and she hit a spot that was like someone put a defibrillator on me, and I jolted. Like and same thing, just this, I was shivering, but like my skin was red hot, and that was the movement of the chi. And so the same thing occurred with the lymphatic massage. And yeah, like I said, like newfound cognitive performance, but your sleep that night is just absolutely horrendous, because everything is working overtime,
kind of cleaning itself,
like the liver and everything, to get it all out, because it finishes with the liver and the colon. And a lot of people don't understand that, because I mean, like, it doesn't just like vanish. It has to go through the liver and through the colon. So you look at it as a tier.
Yep.
And that's where I was kind of going wrong with my practice, was I would really isolate the liver and the colon, and people would see these benefits, but I would be isolating things like the cells as well. So you're getting this release and movement of toxins, but not supporting the lymphatic system. So then that gets congested, and you're trying to push everything through the liver, and it cannot handle it. And then people start to realize, when I was doing my gut protocol, I dug like this huge hole that was like really difficult to climb out of, because I ran so many killers and everything, not supporting the lymphatic system and trying to push everything through the liver and the colon, which
you said you ran so many killers. What do you mean by that?
So bacterial killers, because I had a big overgrowth.
Yeah.
Like SIBO and autoimmune bacterias and all this kind of stuff. And so like, me being the, you said it myself, I buy the most hardcore stuff, everything. So I was like just pushing killers as much as I could. And I had done that with other clients as well. And like things will be okay. And then one day it just goes completely south, like a complete 180. And that's where I learned, like my mentor had been like, hey, like you got to focus on the lymphatic system on top of this.
Yep.
And performing things like dry brushing, self-lymphatic massage, a really one for people to.
I like that you do that. You know what dry brushing is. Yeah. I learned about that when I worked in spas, actually.
Okay. Are you familiar with slapping Qigong?
I can probably guess what it is, but
you literally just slap yourself. You literally just go on the nodes.
Oh yeah,
right? And then you slap your entire, like all around the lymphatic system.
So that's kind of like Tapotment in massage.
Yeah.
So like
right?
like any form of like tapping or percussion techniques.
Well, and I tell people too, like, you know those stupid infomercials where you'd stand on that machine and would just shake your ass like crazy? I'm like, there is validity to that, right? A little bit, yeah. There's a little bit of validity to that because that vibration, like if you look at the research on trampolines and lymphatic movement, it's because that vibration and jarring can actually stimulate movement of the lymphatic system. The reason these things get laughed at, first of all, it's kind of funny watching somebody shake like crazy, but also you're not supporting the other systems. So you got somebody coming in, let's say a lymphatic massage, because a lot of people scoff at a lymphatic massage.
Yeah, some people, I'd say most people are like, what's that? And then other people would be like, oh, I don't think that does anything.
Yeah, or they go for one and they don't reap the benefits that they potentially could, but that's because they're not supporting the cells. They're not supporting the liver. They didn't drink enough fluids. They went out and had coffee. They ate McDonald's that night. They had a beer, right? They just, everything has to work as like an ecosystem to reap the most benefits from these things. It's the same with just like your massage too. Mm-hmm. How many people come for a massage and then they don't replenish their fluids and electrolytes afterwards and whatnot? You know, or take adequate rest for the inflammatory system to calm down.
Yeah,
there's certain, don't see the benefits.
There's certain things that I've learned over the years and studied the science of like, hey, what should you do before or after a massage? And the water thing is I'm not going to say it's a myth, but drinking water after a massage, in my opinion, and the science says like it's not like you have to do it.
I look at more electrolytes.
Yeah, I like electrolytes, but it depends on the massage. Like if I work on someone's neck and shoulder for an hour, I'm not going to move much lymph. I'm literally just decreasing tension of muscles so that they can have better range of motion of that joint of the shoulder. Mm-hmm. Would they benefit from a lymphatic massage like 2 days after that? Probably. Mm-hmm. Do they need to drink more water after getting their shoulder treated that like intensely? Not really. Hopefully they're drinking enough water anyways. So that's what I tell my students. Like Health Canada recommends about 2 liters roughly a day. Mm-hmm. So if you're drinking 2 liters and you've already drank 2 liters in that day and then you've gotten a massage and you're not thirsty, I mean, go home and maybe I like drinking water before bed. You should have a glass. I do feel it cleanses, helps with digestion. It's super important. But do you have to drink water? Not really. You should just make sure you get your optimal amount of water all the time.
Yeah, I think
during a cleanse though, or during a specific type of like regimen that you're doing with your body. And if you're like, oh, I'm going to do the sauna and do hot yoga this week, sure, that's cool. Okay, but make sure you're getting your water and your electrolytes too.
I was going to say, because we're on the topic of water, it's important for people to understand that, they used to say, what was it, the 8 glasses of water a day. Now it's just drink when you're thirsty. But everybody, not everybody, but a good portion of people, 2 things that kind of grind my gears is one, when people have clear urine, they think they're super hydrated. It's actually the opposite because you are flushing your electrolytes. You don't want to have that clear urine. Yeah. You always want to have some color to your urine that's not promoted by like riboflavin, so your B vitamins and stuff like that. I agree. Right? Some color to your urine and obviously not brown and stuff, right? Yeah. But also too, so you mentioned drinking water before bed, okay? The reality that you woke up because you had to pee is significantly low compared to what people think it is. What happens is when you get into your sleep cycles, everything down regulates in terms of like the bowels and the bladder, right? So when you wake up and you're like, oh, I just woke up because I had to pee. Well, what happened was you were coming out of that sleep cycle. So then everything started to kind of produce again. And then next thing you know, the bladder's full. So then you go to the bathroom. Because I'll always tell people, I was like, drink the same amount of water and then take some sleeping pills. You didn't pee yourself and you didn't wake up. Like, don't take sleeping pills. But you get where I'm going with my point, right? You woke up for some other reason. Now, yes, there are instances though where you drink so much water that yes, you will wake up. But most people, especially between that 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. time, that's your liver. That's your liver. That's where a lot of detoxification is occurring. A thyroid conversion is occurring. It is struggling for whichever reason, missing nutrients, over too much inflammation, bacteria, whatever. You're coming out of that sleep cycle. So then when you wake up, you're like, oh, I got to pee.
Yeah.
But we look at it as, oh, I'm going to start limiting my water before bed because I'm waking up having to pee. These people still wake up.
I think there's other factors too. And I know for me personally, coffee and alcohol, obviously if you're drinking
cortisol disrupts your rhythm, and that's going to affect the liver.
Well, and I always say, you probably can speak to this more, but if you're consuming caffeine, your kidneys need to work a little harder, and they're going to essentially use more water in order to maybe not synthesize, but to break down that caffeine, right?
Yeah.
And is caffeine broken down in a bit in the kidneys and liver? Or where
it'll be broken down. It depends. Like, it's more so the liver, because when you look at people with genetic predispositions about how they tolerate caffeine, the biggest thing with caffeine and disrupting sleep cycles or like creating urination is, one, it does act as a diuretic.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And that's probably the main thing that affects me. So I like coffee. I start my morning with a coffee. I've got a fancy coffee machine. I make a latte. And I find that if I drink a couple of coffees, I try to limit it to 1 or 2, which is like very minimal, but I feel like that's lots. Like I try to not drink coffee for a day, and it's tough. I just enjoy it. But that'll affect my waking up in the middle of the night to have to pee. So if I drink a bit of alcohol, even 1 beer before bed, like even if I had it at 8 p.m. or 7, that's going to affect the way my body's processing the alcohol essentially. And
so that's going to be more your cortisol, right? Because you're going to disrupt the circadian rhythm, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where a lot of people don't understand, like where you're getting the hangovers and you're getting these issues and whatnot, is high levels of cortisol. Because, like, yes, it's a poison to your body and everything, but your liver is working so hard, so you're secreting more and more cortisol. Right? And which that chronic cortisol also becomes pro-inflammatory, it disrupts sleep cycles. And with caffeine, so I also want to say too, on the subject of water and caffeine, if you drink caffeine, like, because you have the habitual caffeine drinkers, like coffee drinkers who don't get energy, but that's because they've created so many adenosine receptors. Because how caffeine works, like for the viewers, or maybe you chat if you don't know as well, is it doesn't actually give you energy. I've been saying that for years, and I'm starting to see it pop up and people
I've always agreed. I was like, coffee doesn't really give me energy, but I enjoy it. If you don't take it often, meaning like if you don't drink coffee like at all, and then you do have one, I do feel like it gives you a buzz because your body's not used to it. Well,
so here's what happens. Yeah. So you have adenosine, which is a molecule that builds up throughout the day, and you clear a lot of it in your sleep. So that's why if you have a poor sleep, you're also still pretty tired. Various other mechanisms as well, but in the context of adenosine, caffeine is pretty much the same molecule. So it will fill up those adenosine receptors, blocking you from metabolizing adenosine. But how you respond to that is over time, you build more adenosine receptors.
Yep.
So that's why when you take a break, those receptors decrease back to closer to a natural state, which then ends up, you have the caffeine. So now you get more of a kick from it.
Yep.
But what caffeine also does, so going back to like disrupting the sleep cycles and everything, it doesn't necessarily, for most individuals, raise cortisol, but it inhibits the reduction of cortisol. So cortisol stays heightened. So most people are waking up because they're stressed, hate their jobs. So they're waking up with a heightened cortisol response already, but yet fatigued. So then they have coffee, which keeps it heightened, and then it crashes.
Yeah.
And then if you look at an actual like adrenal test, you can see, well, that was me. Like, but not due to caffeine. Like, I don't drink caffeine at all. Could you imagine me on caffeine? So mine was like this, and then crashed real hard because it's so high in the morning.
Yeah.
And so that's where caffeine. So now instead of having a nice glucose and circadian rhythm throughout the day, it's kind of doing this, which then affects the sleep cycles. And that's why I tell people your coffee at 6 a.m. could be the reason you are waking up at 1 a.m.
Yeah. Right? I agree. Yeah.
And a lot of people are not familiar with that.
It'll affect you the whole day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't remember the exact half-life of caffeine. You probably know. I've heard it's 5 hours, but I think it's actually
different
12.
It's different for everyone.
And it's different,
right?
yeah.
Some people in and out, like if you look at CYP enzymes, they have fast CYP enzymes, which is a gene for processing the caffeine. If they're fast, obviously it's going to have a shorter half-life.
Yep.
But if they're slow, it's going to be, I think I have I've seen on my genetics. Like I have a slow one. So if I have a coffee, I'm guaranteed to wake up that night.
Okay, so I remember reading this in my nutrition course. The slower metabolizer of caffeine means that it's going to you'll get a sort of a spike higher, but you won't get it out of your system as quickly as the fast metabolizers. So they'll still, the fast metabolizers will still kind of feel a kick, but they won't feel or like kind of a buzz. Yeah. And then they'll have it out of their system and they'll be able to go to sleep.
That's like my best friend, Michael. He will have a large double while he's laying in bed watching YouTube videos and then pass out and sleep through the whole night.
The odd time, like if I'm at a birthday party or something and I'm out and have dinner and drinks and sometimes people order dessert and then they'll be like, oh, do you want a coffee? That's when I'll sometimes order like a 10 p.m. coffee. And I find
what is that? Why does coffee go with dessert? I never understood that. Man.
I think I hear
that all the time.
Yeah, I think it's probably just kind of tradition for some. I'm not sure which culture, but
ones that have a fast CYP enzyme. Can sleep on caffeine.
Yeah, I think. If I could, I would have a piece of chocolate and a coffee or an espresso after every meal. But obviously, that's
French.
Not gonna work.
Is it French?
The espresso.
Well, the tradition of having caffeine or coffee with
I don't
dessert.
know, because I've heard in Italy that you aren't supposed to drink coffee after noon. Like it's considered not Italian. But I don't know.
It's a cultural thing.
So it could be something else. It could be American. It could be English. We'll have to look into it.
So while we're talking, so you would say that you drink caffeine more as an habitual thing?
Yeah, I actually meditate.
Energy?
I meditate with my coffee in the morning. So I wake up in the morning and I try to. So you were mentioning the adenosine. I was reading the book Why We Sleep by, I can't remember his name. I want to say Steven something.
Scott Stevenson's or something.
It's not Scott, but you've got it. I'll have to borrow it maybe. Yeah. Anyways, really good book. I didn't finish it yet. I was borrowing it from a roommate. And we had to take it back to the library. So I got to finish it. Anyways, he was talking about that first hour where you shouldn't consume really anything other than water, and just get your body kind of moving. So I try to push back the time when I consume the caffeine.
Yeah, for that natural cortisol response.
Yeah, exactly. To get the adenosine receptors kind of, or the adenosine back to normal levels, essentially, before putting the caffeine in my body. Do I do that every day? No, not really, because I've created this routine where I wake up and I shower and I get ready for the day. This is pretty much every day, days I work, and then I try to do similar on days off. I don't always shower right away if I have a day off, but I'll make a latte and I will sit and meditate for about 10 minutes. And I usually just do a YouTube meditation. Sometimes I'll do a completely silent one, but just kind of enjoy the coffee. So it's not 100% part of that, is more so for my mind and my body. And it's just a good way to start the day. So I'll sip on the latte while just taking some breaths, doing some breath work, maybe doing a bit of stretching, or just closing my eyes, listening to a guided meditation. Yeah. Which I think it's my own theory, but I think that kind of counterbalances some of the effects of caffeine, because 100%. I'm putting my mind in a state of rest and
GABA release.
Parasympathetic nervous system, and then slowly sipping on some caffeine. So it tends to still be pretty balanced.
No, that's perfect, because I always tell people, like, if you're drinking caffeine, you should take theanine with it, or because not many people are going to have that morning routine, especially because most people are rushing out the door. But theanine, because if you also look at it too, like caffeine can spike dopamine. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is we're just miraculous meat suit. Our body's super smart. So it sees these surges of dopamine and it can downregulate things. So you don't get these surges that the brain potentially thinks may lead to brain damage, right? So by taking theanine, you can avoid the quote unquote potential brain damage chronically from using caffeine.
Is theanine is that in dairy at all?
Green tea.
Oh, it's in green tea.
It's going to be high amounts of green tea. But theanine activates GABA, which is gamma aminobutyric acid, which is your calming neurotransmitter. The exact same thing meditation does. So you are taking theanine by meditating.
Oh, interesting.
And that's why you're not getting like the anxious feeling or the big crashes from it kind of thing. But the reality is people like to say they like caffeine. And like, yeah, okay, a double tastes good, right? Cream and sugar.
That's too sweet for me. I go regular. I found it. Yeah, I always say I'll get a cream and sugar. Oh, you want a regular coffee? I was like, well, how's that regular? It's got cream and sugar.
No, it's black is regular. I don't know.
Yeah, we're addicted to sugar.
Right.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing is most people like to say it's habitual. I just like having my coffee. But reality is when you dig deeper into the subconscious, you are relying on that caffeine because you need that energy in the morning. So like what I do with my clients, I'm very anti-coffee for people that have a lot of health issues.
I would agree with that.
Because caffeine is a stress response and we need to reduce stress.
Whether it's physical and mental. Like if people are anxious all the time and they're like, I've got anxiety and stress and my work life's really busy. It's like,
let's have some more caffeine.
Start by cutting coffee, and not just for one day, but like at least like a week, like 3-4 days, when you'll start to actually see the effects.
Well, the problem is they've experienced the withdrawals, but that's because they're not supporting the clearance. So that's when I have individuals and I have like, it's as soon as I get a note in one of my check-ins about how they've gone this many days with coffee and they feel much better, I share that because everybody knows I demonize coffee, which there is a time and a place for caffeine. I do believe it provides certain benefits under the proper context, not drinking it every single freaking day and getting your crappy Tim Hortons or whatever, which is full of pesticides and toxins and everything, right? So if you're doing caffeine, because you can use caffeine to reset a circadian rhythm. You can use like a cyclical approach to help do that because of its ability to, keep cortisol risen. But yeah, it boils down to like that. It's not per se a habit, it's a crutch, but they think, oh, I just enjoy my coffee. Well, no, you enjoy being able to wake up in the morning and get things done because you cannot do that without caffeine. So I tell people, I'm like, your lack of energy is not because you're not drinking caffeine. There's some sort of underlying condition that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
But people don't want to hear that. They just want to keep drinking their caffeine.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? I think it's the habits too. So it's hard to change habits, like you gotta, even with things like money, like you're like, oh, I'm trying to save money, and you try to work more and you try to save more. That doesn't really work. You actually have to change a bit of your lifestyle, which I kind of, I didn't have to do too much because I was able to work a little bit more.
Be single.
But yeah, being single kind of helps. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Being single, I like to think there's some relationships that are pretty balanced financially, hopefully.
That is true.
But if you're out dating, you're probably going to be spending a little more money. So, but changing your habits to change your health, and whatever is going on in your life, like that's really what it's all about. And I think that's the difference between, like you were talking about, a scientist who does research and then who, a coach or a health practitioner. You end up being a mentor. You help being like you're a person who helps to guide a person to a better place by helping them find new habits, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, and make new habits and change certain ones. But anyways.
Well, that's where, like, I don't know about in your profession. I know in mine though, like you have to build established relationships with individuals. Of course, like you have to be cautious about crossing boundaries and whatnot, like, cause you still are their coach or practitioner at the end of the day. But understanding, like, that's the difference. Like you go see a doctor, like, first of all, they're asking very minimal questions. They have minimal information provided you. They're just basing off, oh, my tooth hurts. Okay, well, take this to address the pain in your tooth. But they're not asking you, like, never mind diet, because that's like the rebuttlement to it all. If the doctor doesn't ask your diet, well, is the doctor asking, are you stressed at work? How many hours of sleep are you getting? Are you drinking enough water? Like more than just the diet kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Are you somebody who, so I have a question for like new clients, right? I say, if you get cut off in traffic, I say, how mad do you get? And how long do you stay at that level of anger?
Ooh, good question.
Right. And I'm gotta be honest though, right? Because people will be dishonest all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So if you get the honest answer, that's going to give you a good indication of how this individual is going to be. So if I get somebody that gets super angry and they take like a while, not only is that telling me physiological things that are occurring, but if I'm going to give them an extremely constructed meal plan, they're going to lose their minds and not be able to follow that meal plan.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's sort of like a personality question.
Yeah.
I started doing that kind of near the end of some of my training I was doing back in Canmore, just getting a bit more information about their, essentially their personality. Like, hey, how will they be able to commit to a program? And that's important. I definitely haven't done as much one-on-one stuff as you. As a massage therapist, I usually, with that therapeutic relationship, you just see them in the room. It's very rare that I need to do check-ins. I know you do check-ins all the time. I never text my patients. I might send the odd email with like some stretches, like, hey, here's the stretches we talked about, or just some scheduling. So it's very professional. But if you're in that coaching realm, you've got to get to know people more.
Yep.
In the massage realm, I've definitely found like getting to know your patients more. That with over time, you get to see like, oh, their knee's acting up again. That was happening 2 years ago. When we treated this muscle and this muscle, it helped. Let's do that again, right? So little things like that, where you can kind of implement the knowledge and history of that patient. But doctors, they don't ask too many questions. I think you're right about that. I don't like to speak ill of doctors, but so
that's what I used to always say. As you know, I used to like be like about doctors and everything, right? But then I started to learn like they're literally just practicing within what they're allowed to practice. They're literally just doing their job.
Yeah, and they've got. I was listening to your other podcast. I think you and it was Matt were talking a bit about doctors, and I think a lot of doctors are actually quite overwhelmed and stressed too. So they're trying to practice medicine, kind of confined under these rules of medicine that they have to follow, which are like fairly specific. And I don't know how strict they are, but you gotta have insurance, and you don't want to lose your license as a medical practitioner. And you're kind of overworked, and you've got tons of fees. Like people often think doctors make a ton of money, but they also have to pay a lot for their insurance. They have to pay for their certifications. Like, I think it's tens of thousands of dollars a year. And if they're just a GP, I don't say just, but if they're a general practitioner, they're not going to be making near as much money as like a specialist or an orthopedic surgeon. So they're kind of stressed, right? I don't think all of them are, but we sometimes think, or at least I used to think like, the doctor's going to know what to do. I go to my doctor at least once a year, usually twice, and I go for a checkup. I've heard some people don't even do that, but luckily I have the knowledge to take care of myself. I've got some nutrition background. I've got my massage. I know about the body. I try to eat healthy and exercise, so I don't have to go to the doctor too often. But when I do, I get kind of regular blood work, check up on things.
What do you get checked?
All the basics. So not near as much as what you would do, but just checking basic hormone levels. I've had B vitamin checked. I'll get my red blood cell count, obviously white blood cell, and then
you get the whole lipid panel.
The whole lipid panel. Yeah. It's interesting too, with the lipid panel, they'll check, I think, cholesterol too there, right?
Yeah.
So I remember maybe not everybody knows this, I'm sure you do, but things can fluctuate so much. I went and got a blood test done, and they were like, whoa, your lipids are like way off. Like your cholesterol is really high. And that day or the day before I had my blood work done, I had like eggs and like bacon for breakfast and ate pizza that night. Yeah. So like the amount of lipids and fats in my system that day were super high. So of course my blood's going to show kind of like wacky numbers.
Yeah.
And then I went back again and they're like, oh yeah, you're fine.
Have you ever gotten a calcium score?
I may have, because I suffered from osteopenia a little bit, like low bone density. But I don't know what that's at. That's a good one though.
I always say like, because that you're going to see risk of heart attack and all that kind of stuff with that one, right?
Okay.
So like, we'll just say congesting the arteries and everything. But I wanted to go back about where you were talking about with the doctors being overwhelmed and everything. another thing that I took into account is like, let's say you're coming into the doctor's office and you're like, I'm dealing with this or whatever. That doctor most likely knows damn well you're not following a suitable lifestyle to prevent this. And it probably irritates them, because not the fact that you're doing that, but the fact that they cannot go outside of their practice, because they can't prescribe you a nutrition plan. They can't, tell you what supplements
they can
to
refer
take.
you to a nutritionist.
Yeah, right. But I think
or a dietitian.
You take everything you mentioned, where they're just like super overwhelmed, and it's probably just like, all right, let's just get this guy in and out. Or not that they don't care. It's just like, it's like, I know this individual is not taking the necessary steps to better themselves, and they're just going to continue to come back for this medication, right? It was like one time a pharmacist lost it on me because I didn't want to go to the doctor to get a prescription for my inhaler. And she was like, why are you having asthma? Why? Right. And at the time I knew why, I just didn't care. Right. But she had a very valid point. Like, go take care of your asthma. I can't just keep prescribing you inhalers. You have to take care of this asthma. And so to me, that was like honorable and admirable that, I made her feel bad though and got the inhaler, but it was an example of like, instead of just signing this off and take this, it's like, you need to figure out why you're having asthma, because that means something else. You can't just mask it by taking an inhaler every day, multiple times a day.
We need to get to the root of the problems usually, and the healthcare system can do that, but it's not great at it right now.
No, especially like, so take my case, for example, right? Or I'll give you a better case, like, because a lot of people are familiar with mine, but like, I'm currently working with a 6-year-old in Florida that had ulcerative colitis.
Wow, it's 6?
Yeah. And so because they put her on a massive round of antibiotics, which obviously destroys not only the microbiome, even your healthy, normal commensal flora, but disrupts the mucosa lining. It just creates a lot of inflammation, right? And so the GI specialist told her parents to do an enema for 14 days in a row.
Whoa.
And they contacted me and they're like, the blood is so bad. And I said, look at this. Although it is water, I said, think of it as sandpaper on a wound. I'm like, the last thing you want to do with ulcerative colitis is an enema.
Yeah.
Like, and so, and then now we're at the point now though, where because going through this, obviously the immune system is compromised. And so she ended up getting like a near infection and strep throat. So she had to go on more antibiotics, poor little girl. But we've been able to compensate with like 400 billion, probiotic and stuff like this. All the bleeding's gone. The bloating's come down. She doesn't burp anymore. She had other issues I won't get into, but we've seen tremendous differences, like progression from her, that the GI specialist would have never been able to like diagnose or treat. And so why I say this and why we're kind of talking about this is because when it comes to finding the root cause, it's important for individuals to understand that when you go and you get your medical license, you are now put in a box. And I'm not being negative here. I'm not demonizing. I'm just being like the facts of reality here. It's just the way laws work, especially here in Canada. You are now put in a box and you cannot practice outside this box because you are now at risk of lawsuit.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's like individuals have mentioned to me, they're like, well, why don't you go get this or do that? Because then I can't practice half the stuff that I do because I'm now being governed by the government.
Yeah, it's kind of nice having freedom in certain ways, which like we talk about it in massage, where being unregulated is kind of a hindrance to the profession, but it's also nice because we have certain freedom in how we practice.
But then you get the idiots. You get the idiots who are unregulated, and they're the ones that give everything a bad name.
True.
Right. Yeah. And that's where the lack of regulation does create a complication. But then like you look at like, obviously I'm not like, I can't compare this to massage therapy, but you talk naturopaths, right? A lot of the times, I'll just say these words, I am picking up the scraps of naturopaths. It's not that they're wrong or anything. They just are only allowed to practice within a certain realm. So they implement what they can practice, but then they're missing other pieces of the puzzle. So like, maybe not this example, but kind of going back how I was saying, I used to push everything through the immune system or the liver and not the lymphatic system in conjunction with everything, right? Same thing. Okay, well, we can target this. Like take gut protocols, for example. They'll give you killers and stuff, but they don't understand biofilms and they don't understand the repair and reinoculate phase. like repairing that mucosal lining. I don't
know much about that.
Right. And so a lot of specialists don't either. Like when you bring up biofilms, they don't like, they're starting to come, like a lot of people are starting to, or I'll say specialists are becoming versed of biofilms, which are a protective plaque. This is why bacteria can be so hard to kill. So if you look at a naturopath's rate of dealing with an overgrowth of bacteria, things like SIBO, for example, there is an 80% relapse rate. But that's because they'll either, they'll use killers, not the proper ones, or they'll refer out to doctors to get antibiotics, which are so systemically damaging, but also don't address biofilms. So the relapse rate is 80%.
It's so complex. And you've mentioned this before. I've probably heard it, but what is SIBO again?
Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where like your healthy flora is overgrown, right? You can also get like bad bugs are a part of that as well. Like your opportunistic bacteria, it's called. But yeah, like when you look at treating SIBO, for example, like rifamycin, I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but it's the number one antibiotic used to treat SIBO. It falls into that category of the 80% relapse rate. So people will feel better. They'll start bringing in certain foods again and whatnot, and then just go right back to feeling the way they were and distension and everything. And that's because these, like I said, they're not wrong. They're just only able to practice within this box, right?
Yeah. So, they're practicing because they're practicing physicians and kind of stuck.
If you, let's say you decided against massage therapy, where do you think you'd be right now?
Oh, if I didn't become a massage therapist? Good question.
I always feel like you'd be a hippie on the beach.
A hippie on the beach. Well, I feel like I was just doing that last week in Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would probably still be somewhere in the health field. I do like the health field. Looking back, I probably would have studied a little more kin and maybe gone into more personal training.
Okay.
I never really thought of myself as the sort of the desk job kind of person. The teaching does have its desk related to it. So when you're working with assignments, grading papers and things like that, grading tests and even putting together PowerPoints, like I don't mind that, but it's not so much my personality.
So would that prevent you from teaching full time?
No, because teaching is mostly like just like sharing everything. Yeah. So that's kind of my sort of long-term goal is just to continue teaching, keep working with educational aspects of massage therapists, whether I'm educating a massage therapist that's in school or out of school. I like doing that. I feel like, when you have those days where you're like, oh, I don't feel like I work too hard and I feel kind of energized. Yeah. So when people learn things, like when your student learns something and you're like, hey, they get it, they understand it. You feel good. You feel like happy essentially. Yeah. So it's a good feeling. So I think probably either in the health and wellness or maybe in the teaching. So my mom's a teacher. Okay. She's a sub right now, hasn't taught too much over the last couple of years, but, being in a classroom setting would be kind of cool. Whether I taught like grade 4 or 5s, that would be something else that I could maybe see.
Grade 4 or 5s?
Like that age.
Oh, the age group. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if
it's just like school in general.
Yeah. Just being a teacher.
Yeah. Right? Okay.
So that would be maybe in another life. I would have been. Yeah, I like kids. Yeah. I probably wouldn't want to go as young as kindergartners, and I probably wouldn't want to go into the high school level as much. But I've got some friends that are teachers, and they seem to love it. It's a lot of work, obviously. There's a lot of extra work as being a teacher. I saw my mom do a lot of that extra work too. So she spending time after school and you're prepping and you're getting things ready for the next day, and focusing on your students well. It's a lot of extra work, but I think it's rewarding too. And that's kind of what I'm doing, right? So yeah, if I wasn't a massage therapist, I'd either be like a teacher, maybe a personal trainer, or work in like maybe another area of healthcare, like a recreational therapist or something. It would be cool to work a little bit more in the actual health system directly, like in hospital settings.
Yeah, okay.
So I think someone with my skill set would be helpful for someone who just finished their shoulder surgery. They had rotator cuff repair. Hey, yeah, see the physio and see Chad a little bit too for some massage, or both, right? Anyways.
Okay, so Any projects right now or anything?
So projects right now, the one I mentioned is I'm just finishing up some final editing for...
And that's the course that
the online course for massage therapists. Yep. And then other projects, I've got a couple similar ones like that, which are going to be in person. And I don't think there's too much else. I kind of have an idea. I'm just looking for a studio for a yoga, 6-week yoga class or course, I should say, which is geared towards men actually. So I'm trying to put together...
I remember you telling me, that's right, because you want me to come along or something or whatever?
Yeah, I'll invite you to it once I find a space. I'm just looking at sort of finalizing the classes. And the difference between it is I'm trying to bring in a little bit more of the philosophical aspects of yoga, and as well as some mental health aspects. So not being like a psychologist or counselor, but just talking a little bit about, hey, working with your body helps with your mind, which therefore helps with your day-to-day life. So putting together a yoga course where it's men, that it's kind of a safe space where we'd have like a bit of a discussion after each class.
So would this be geared towards like trauma kind of thing, or?
No, not at all. Because I'm not a trauma specialist, but if people came who had some mild traumas, definitely welcome. But I think if you are experiencing an actual trauma and you're like anxious, depressed, or went through an event, like, see a healthcare provider like a psychologist. Definitely go there. This is more so for somebody kind of, I guess you could say, in between, guys like us who sometimes feel like, hey, we can talk to each other a little bit, but in day-to-day life, like we're busy with work, we're busy with things. Like where's a cool place where we can go and kind of relax, be with like-minded people. I think that people already do it. Like they do go to the gym, they do go to maybe some martial arts, and they have a good like sensei at their martial arts. But I think the yoga avenue would be a good one, because there's still not a lot of guys that are, especially kind of guys like us. I don't think of myself as a great, like really flexible yogi, but I know the importance.
You mean the actual physical flexibility?
Part. Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. Like I got still really tight hips. I've worked on them, and I was like, man, this takes forever.
You ever done psoas leg raises?
I think so. I've been doing like a psoas march with a band, but I do like legs up the wall, and then I'll hold with a bolster as well too. I'll show you a good one on the cable. And then I'll do like traction as well too. But anyways, this is another project, yoga for men, and just like creating a space where we can move our bodies and see the benefits of like, hey, this builds strength, this builds flexibility, this builds balance for our body and also our mind, so that we can have our day-to-day life that's a little bit less stressful, or maybe not sort of get angry at that colleague at work, and sort of develop your relationships a little better. Because I definitely feel the things I've learned, not just in yoga, but certain books I've read, like, hey, I need to keep my mind in check a little more, or hey, this is frustrating me, instead of like kind of vibrating and being anxious and not knowing how to like express it. Let's find like a safe place or a safe way to express like some frustration in life, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if someone's looking for this course, how can they go about this? Because you said it was at a college.
This yoga or
let's start with the massage course.
The massage course is available on the Online Wellness Institute. So you can, I think it's onlinewellnessinstitute.com.
Make sure you give me the link, because I'll put it in the description.
Yeah, I can put the link. And then the yoga course, like I said, it's just kind of in the making. So you could contact me directly. I'm slowly building up my Instagram. I hate video editing, so I'm not very good with the design of videos. I'm slowly getting better. But anyways, you can contact me on Instagram too.
What's your handle?
Just Chad Friel RMT.
Okay, I'll put that in.
Pretty simple. If you've got questions, you can shoot me a message there. I'll take suggestions too. I'm trying to build more of videos that surround mainly movement, a little bit of massage, things like foam rolling, knowing what you should stretch if you've got back pain, because a lot of times people end up getting stuck on pain in life. They're like, oh, my knee is sore, I need to like stretch my knee. And it's like, well, maybe you need to strengthen. Maybe you actually need to work a little more on ankle mobility or something. Low back pain is best example where people will be like, oh, I'm going to stretch my back more. The low back is a very vulnerable joint or a couple of joints, and it often doesn't need as much flexibility as we think. We actually need more flexibility in our hips. So, for example, stretching your hips in order to help with lower back pain. Little things like that. So I've got a few videos there, and I may put some up on YouTube sometime. I'll get some advice from you for that.
Yeah. YouTube's the way to go now, man. So that's awesome. Okay, well, Chad, thanks so much for coming. I feel like you and I could talk forever, so I'm definitely going to have you on again, and we'll definitely talk about other avenues and whatnot. I think just in the beginning, keep it to see how long people stay interested in the podcast.
Yeah, I think an hour is probably good.
Yeah, but no, I could definitely talk to you about a lot. That's what I say to people. Like I mentioned, hey, like my friend Chad's coming on. And I said one thing that I really appreciate about him is you and I, we see eye to eye on a lot of things, but we also disagree on some things, which is okay.
Yeah.
Right. We don't hate each other for it. It ends up as a joke afterwards because we are kind of like in that time and age now where if you disagree with somebody over something, you can't be friends. And
there's no need for those. Disagreements are fine. And I think like
become debates, right? And like an actual intellectual debate to find a common ground within that realm, because, unless it's something really bad, if I may not agree with some form of massage therapy that you do, there still is some benefit to that massage therapy. Yeah. Right. I'm not saying that is it. That's just an example. So then you find that common ground. I think that's important to have, instead of just kind of like alienating everyone because they don't agree with you, because that's something that I had done in the past. Right.
It's you got to learn the why. It's just like, hey, why are you choosing to do that movement, or why are you choosing that food? Mm-hmm. And there could be a good reason, and it may not, and you might agree with it, or you might be like, oh, I've learned something. And I'm a big fan of learning, right? Yeah. If I learn like, hey, I'm going to do this movement or eat this food because it does this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. One of the recent things I just learned is like, hey, the amount of sunlight that you get will affect the next couple of days and your energy. And I was like, oh, I never thought of it as being like, Friday, I'm really tired because I haven't seen the sun in 4 days, right? Whereas I felt fine on Wednesday because I went for a nice long walk on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Yeah. And then suddenly you don't feel very good. Yeah. So that's just, it makes sense. You can probably speak to more of the science behind it. But yeah, being open to learning is one thing I kind of try to pride myself on. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're pretty good too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's good that you like, what I was going to say too, before we close this out, is like context is super important, because like I recently made a video on what I feed my girls or whatever. And someone had messaged me saying that raw food is bad. We don't recommend it. Mm. And now this great person, like this was a good conversation. So I'm not like hating on anybody here or trying to bring anyone down. But you could tell that this individual had not watched the video, which is fine. I don't expect that. But if you're going to be commenting, maybe do some, shall we say, research first, so you would have the proper context where you would have watched me comment about, because we were talking about like bacteria and stuff, and I was like, well,
people
that's
like
why.
To react.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's why I supplement HCl. Like during that whole bad pandemic time and everything, I remember sharing something on Facebook about what was the guy in charge of Alberta? I'm not good with politics.
Kenny?
Yeah. That he banned liquor sales or whatever.
Oh, he was thinking about it.
Oh, no. So I posted it and everybody started commenting, freaking out. But if you actually opened up the link, you were being rickrolled. Oh. That stupid dance little song, right? But that was just like a social experiment to show that people just read the headline and react without doing any research.
We could talk tons about that later. Yeah.
Right. So that's big there. So I really appreciate you about that. I appreciate you for that.
Thanks, man.
I admire that. So, but yeah, thank you again for coming on. And I'll make sure to put where people can find you in the description. Perfect. And those who are watching the video. We will definitely have to do this again, man.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.